The following is a transcript of a conversation between Matías De Stefano, referred to as me, and his higher self, referred to as I am. 27th January 2021, Agriculture. Me. Sowing a New Humanity. When we named the foundation in 2012, I immediately decided to call it Arsayien in honor of those who spoke to the world, and when I should have mentioned our intention, that phrase emerged, sowing a new humanity. The Arsayien were one of the three Atlantean priestly groups of present-day northern Egypt. The Emeniens were the ones who taught about the tree of life and its codes. The Arsayien were the ones who taught about the flower of life and its laws. And the Idilien taught about the seed of life and its potentials. In initiatory education, all apprentices were first required to study with the Emeniens. They educated about the codes of creation, all dimensions, letters, structures of life, taught how the natural and human kingdoms worked, and its teachings were the basis of the Arsayien. They taught the power of the word, and how it was able not only to communicate information between people, but also to modify realities, manifest dreams, connect with other kingdoms and beings. To be able to say the key words, to perform the magic, coherence was necessary, and therefore they educated about the laws of the universe and how to manage them as a conscious being. Thus, the Idilien could become their own voice, their own creation, teaching about the foundations and fundamental patterns of existence, the elements, geometries, and from there, how to make alchemy, transforming themselves into what they previously communicated with, activate the divine potential of the seed of the great tree. I am. All three were a sacred trinity of wisdom. Me. Yes, but it was the Arsayiens who organized the spread of the network's message. When, in the age of Leo, everything was failing and civilization seemed to collapse imminently, the nomadic peoples of the south began to threaten the stability of the Atlantean colonies, and the Idilien represented this axis by breaking. The Arsayien, reading this in the heavens and the earth, speaking with other dimensions, saw clearly the collapse of Leo and the hope of returning in Aquarius, and therefore began a retreat where the Idilien were hiding in various parts of the world. Some Arsayien were sent to make paths to the nodes of the earth, to communicate to the world that sooner or later we would return to activate consciousness, the planetary network. I am. The road from north to south. Me. Harwitum. Hare, north. Wifu, south. Tume, road. The Arsayiens called a meeting of the 12 families, which was called Harin-Folenk, that is, sun, stars, and moon. This meeting spoke of a stellar lineup in which all things would change, and the 12 families, each representing a heavenly house, had to agree on how to take back the reins of this change without losing control. But the Arsayiens had another plan, a plan B. They gathered a group of young priests in front of the great Sphinx, Tul Basik, to make a vow for Emezda, the memory. The vow was to defend memory through remembrance, and to remember, they had to carry the information and distribute it through blood generation after generation from the nodes or heavenly houses on earth. These were called Kem Basikir, guardians of the Atlantean Nile, and they were the ones who made the Harwitum path while the 12 families debated. I remember that at that meeting, 3 of our heavenly ancestors introduced themselves, the Inna, aliens from Sirius, the parent star, and one of them said, "You are in the mirrors." The question is not how or who or what or where, the question is when. In the mirror of time and space you will find yourselves again, and your spirits will descend from the tree to become seeds of a new self. It is time to let go of the humanity that you are. Autumn has arrived, and soon you will live in the winter of your spirits. When the time comes, they will know that you have returned to sow a new humanity. That was part of the plan. The when was 12,000 years later at the beginning of Aquarius. The old humanity was the age of Leo, and the new is the Aquarian. That was when. The Arsayien spread their message on the net, and it would be our task to reconnect it, to put the puzzle together. That is why I knew that the word creator of consciousness and realities wove the web, prepared the ground for the seeds we have become when we fall to the ground in the fall, covered with the pressure of the earth throughout the winter. It is time to germinate, and we have begun to do so slowly in recent centuries. Yesterday when we talked about culture, everything was very similar to agriculture, being those cultures the product of the expansions experienced by each human group in the past, intertwining with each other, creating new ones, distorting the original image in thousands of options. I understood that to find the coherence of this whole network, I must open myself to all the parts where my past was fragmented. The path that each one makes in his life, going to new places, traveling, knowing, experiencing different cultures, is almost a journey of collection, like a bee that collects pollen from the flowers scattered throughout the forest to produce honey. And while it does, it expands pollen among trees, fertilizing, pollinating, helping to have more flowers and greater diversity. Knowing things outside only helps me to know myself, to perform the task that the Arsayians had entrusted, to remember oneself. I am. Ein mem pi equals remember yourself. This was the Atlantean mandate, knowing that all that existed was a single being fragmented into millions, and that by knowing the millions you were only reconnecting, uniting in consciousness the parts of yourself with greater experience and wisdom, because each one would have become a specialist of that fragment. In the ancestral worldview, each fragment was a seed born of the great tree, and therefore possessed the full potential of its roots and branches. But at the same time, it is a new tree, with its own qualities and particularities, making it unique. Recognizing seeds as part of the same tree allows you to see all the capabilities you possess in yourself through others. Me. It is what we talked about yesterday. Culture, the development of inner art, of technology that allows us to cultivate ourselves, to know options, the sowing of the spirit, the irrigation of the soul, and the support of the nutrients of the body. Culture being the fruit to harvest from the plant I became, the being. I am. The initiatory path that the Inna described to humans is the method by which you get this seed to germinate and become its own tree. The time and space they talked about, the cycles, the steps, the schools, all describe the method by which to accomplish such a task. Me. And what is the method that awakens technology from our culture? I am. You call it agriculture. Me. I might think that you tell me that in order to become a spiritual being, I must become a farmer. I am. That's right. Isn't that what you had to do? Do you think it was random? Me. I guess not. When my mother told me I was going to a field school, I didn't like the idea at all. But then I learned to value it, and even more so when I knew the logic of why. I was about 10 years old when she told me, and I went to a school near my house, which they called Escuela de los Padres, on Sarmiento Street, hero of education in Argentina. I liked it there. It was original. But my mother, I don't know why, said she wanted to sign up for another school where I would spend most of the day learning things in the field. I refused a lot. I hated the idea. We were to start at 7:30 a.m. each day and come home at 5:30 p.m. We ate, we had a snack, we lived with the teachers. And when we were older, we had to do field tasks, and if we did something wrong, the punishment was to stay longer hours or a whole weekend working in the field. It seemed very military, and half it was, but at the same time I understood something over time. This was real life, the usual life. This is how humanity began. The school was called Regional Agro-Technical Center, CAR. Its classrooms overlooked flower gardens and water fountains. We all had field uniforms, and in addition to the normal subjects, we had the wild tasks: gardening, beekeeping, livestock, horseback riding, vermiculture, poultry, compost, fruit trees, machinery, large animals. At school, we learned everything from the seed to the final product, from the embryo to cooking the animal. We learned to recycle everything, to drive tractors, to use all the tools in the field, to distinguish weeds from grains, to wash the bathrooms, to make hides and crafts from animals and plants. We learned to cook, to clean the classrooms, gardening, science, chemistry, philosophy, mathematics, language, English, literature. It was so much that it was impossible to understand everything, and as great as it was stressful, and they often forgot that we were children, not farm laborers. However, now that I look back, I start thinking about my own ancestors, about my grandmother's own parents. I realize that they had lived their life like this, doing the same as me, but from the lack of general knowledge. When I went to the supermarket and saw a vegetable, I understood the work behind its growth, the patience, the dedication. I am. Agriculture is the culture of agro. Agro comes from the Greek and Indo-European ager, which means land. In Greek, the word ager generated the concept of ageia, describing the set of lands which today we call Gaia, Earth. Me. So that's where the very spiritual name of our planet comes from the word arable land. I am. As we have spoken many times, the human owes his life to the earth, because basically the human is earth. Human means wet earth, from the Latin humus, and the quality of being human is called humility. Me. Something very unusual in the human. I am. Humility is the quality of being connected to the earth, and therefore of valuing what lives on it and grows on it. His attribute is to be humble, which describes the idea that a human should value what is under his feet, because it is what gives him life. Someone who looks all the time to heaven and seeks the divine in the stellar, manifesting the will to leave the world, to free himself from it and float in the cosmos, is a being stripped of humility, because he does not look at the earth, he looks at the sky. He does not value what is under his feet, but prefers not to feel it. Humility relates to wearing bare feet, and not because humility relates to poverty, but it means that you don't put barriers between your body and this world. Me. Even so, it is often thought that humility is of the poor, because the poor are usually described as humble. I am. It's a misconception. Humble is not who has less, but who values and shares what he has. A being can be greedy and conceited, selfish and poor. The concept humility was related to poverty for the same reason that poverty is considered a gift in the heavenly, a political religious strategy of making believe that the kingdom of heaven belongs to the dirty poor who work the earth and get dirty day by day in the mud. This idea related humility with poverty, although they have nothing to do with each other. Humility is the appreciation of the world, of the richness of the earth, of enjoying existence, of sharing what is achieved, of not putting barriers between the ground and the body, of daring to feel the dust and mud from which you come. The first humans covered themselves in mud, used talcum powder to protect themselves from the sun and insects, and therefore it was said that the first humans were born from clay because they dressed in it. They ate fruits, roots, and vegetables until they figured out how to grow. They marveled at heaven, but not to go to it, but because it told them how to sow and harvest. Every human potential, all technology, arose from its relationship with the earth. Every culture arose from cultivation. Every civilization was based on food. All stability was based on food. All security was attributed to the terrain. All divinity was manifested in the elements. Every ceremony and celebration arises from honoring agriculture and its cycles. All festive dates are the traditional product of a product born on earth. And suddenly, the human decided to look at the sky and forget about the earth, and believed that it was simply a resource created for humans at our mercy. The human believed himself divine, and his being was dominated by the ego, consumed by spiritual fire, detached himself from the earth, turned his back on it, and used it at his mercy. The human became so disconnected from the world that he put on shoes so as not to get dirty, and they were getting taller and taller to approach the sun and get away from the ground. Instead of looking at his footsteps, they lifted their chins, stopping their noses, looking at the horizon, and wanted everything in it for themselves. The ego, believing itself divine, began to dominate the land and its resources and moved away from the countryside to live in the city. And the most unexpected point came. Me, not even knowing where the things we eat come from. I am. Exactly. Me. It's amazing how many times most humans don't know where one or another food comes from, or that a chicken is a chicken, or where an egg comes from, or a carrot, or an apple, tomato, meat. It amazes me many times that most do not know where food comes from, and how difficult it is to produce it, and how badly it is produced in many cases, being that everything we do is based on eating. Without food, we die, and yet we don't seem to care where things come from. I am. The human loses himself, not because he doesn't know where he's going, but because he forgot where he comes from. A tree falls because it loses its roots, not its branches. Me. I understand why I spent 5 years of my life in an agro-technical school. I needed to live the land, work it, understand how things are tilled, how things arise from them, understand the peasant, the farmer, the rancher. They are trades that seem remote and precarious in the eyes of today's world. And industrialization has considered that these forced tasks can be performed by machines, and they have encouraged overproduction, claiming that this would generate more resources for humanity. And yet, there is more and more hunger, the greater production there is. In many cases, farmers are blamed as landowners, but to be a farmer, you have to have land. In Argentina, for example, the countryside is the only living and fixed economy that sustains the country's history, and yet rural people are always treated as oligarchy. One of the reasons why this has been the case is because in the 40s, so many people were attracted to live in the cities and factories, especially in Buenos Aires, that rural people were concentrated in what are now poor neighborhoods and villas, favelas, dependent today on the state. If the country had focused its capacity on land, there might not be a small group with large tracts inherited from feudal times, and this has happened in several places in the Americas, but not in Europe, where the gardens have remained the primary way of feeding the families of the peoples, since due to all the wars, they have understood very well the importance of creating one's own food. I am. A country is strong because of two things, its connection to its land and its education. The connection to the earth implies the recognition of its natural resources, of knowing that they are part of the human body that inhabits it, that what you do to the earth you do to yourself, that what you produce and how you produce it is what nourishes your body and your soul. To know the potential of the soil is to awaken humility, to recognize that things do not arise by the magic of thinking about it, but by the alchemy of manifesting it. It may seem absurd, but knowing how a tomato is born, grows, and reproduces is the basis of true humility. Knowing the water cycle, the work of a bee, the patience of a tree, the dedication of an ant, knowing where fruits come from, what they take to grow, knowing where meat comes from, the time and resources required to generate it, as well as the emotion and development of the animals you consume. Knowing that what nourishes you is alive makes you responsible for what lives and what nourishes you. Me. So a fundamental key of spirituality, of planetary awareness, lies in the humility of becoming a farmer, of at least honoring the work of those who produce and the infinite capacity of the earth to generate it. I am. It is in the field that humanity emerged, and it is because of the field that it is still alive. How much longer will it take you to recognize the basics of your existence? The air you breathe for free is produced by trees. If you want to breathe more, plant more trees. The food that nourishes you every day has traveled an enormous journey of time, an extensive process in space, from being seed to being sown, nourished, harvested, transported, cooked, manifested from the hands of the harvester to that of the cooker. A salad is a story. A plate of food is the summary of a millenary culture. When you eat, you consume history, wisdom. You consume the human capacity to have learned to manage time and space. Me. It's a beautiful way to see what we consume. I am. Because the truth is beautiful. Me. And what happens today with everything that happens with GMOs, with the companies that control seeds? I am. Today, you say? This has only been modernized. The modification of genetics is something ancestral. Wheat had only 2 seeds, or 4, just like corn. The apples, pears, and other fruits that you eat today, juicy and huge, in ancient times were small and hard. Malformations were always used by humans to transform species, using them to modify genetics from the early days of sedentary lifestyle. And in turn, understanding seeds as a bargaining chip, they have always been under the control of governments which regulated food, something that today is usually done by companies that finance governments. Only the forms have changed, but not the idea. Me. And how do you change this? I am. As always, not fighting against the old, but taking back the power of the humble. He sees the earth again with the love of a mother who is, who generates, who gives life, who nourishes. Value each food anew. Discover its origin, what it costs to reach you. Marvel at the process of its being and history. Return to earth. On the path of awakening, you usually talk about Gaia, the spirit of Gaia, the soul of the earth, but you forget to look at and honor Ager, her body. Value the body and its minerals. Take deep roots and become the farmer of your own existence. Me. That is sowing a new humanity, a humanity that, although it remembers its interdimensionality, its stellar origin, and seeks its enlightenment, recognizes and respects the earth, knowing about it, being humble in the richness of its potential. I am. Tilling the earth will take on another meaning when instead of doing it to survive, you do it to discover yourself by honoring your origin. Remember, the origin is in the center, and the center closest to you is your heart, and it is aligned to the iron heart of the earth. That's your center, and the stars are the landscape. Look up at the earth, and you will find the true strength of your being. To sow is to deposit a potential, and for it to be new, it is necessary to recognize the originality of this seed as it has always been done in genetic modification. And that novelty is to return to earth, humana. Sowing a new humanity means allowing ourselves to return to earth to germinate a hidden potential waiting to flourish. And the only way to see the flower and its fruit is if the seed returns to earth. Me. All my culture arises from the earth. So, to create a new culture, I must return to earth. I am an agriculture. I am. Sooner or later, all humans will live in the greatest technological age in their history. But it will be the right technology if, while flying through the universe, you have the humility to walk barefoot on the floor of your gardens to collect the fruits of the plants you have sown with your own hands. The blacker their hands are seen by the humus of the orchard, the higher their ships will fly to the stars. Me. I am the seed of this new humanity. I am. Walk barefoot and remember, I am the earth. Me. I am human.